Imagine you're trying to create an entire payment gateway. Payment gateways has got two scenarios which are important. One is success, wherein your user actually made a payment. Another one, a failure, telling the user why his payment was declined. In that case, you're going to create something as an abstraction that kind of hides the logic and still gets you what necessary knowledge you should be giving to the user. Now imagine trying to put this simple code into a Flutter app. What we're going to try and understand that abstraction is actually going to help you save your crucial part of the app and then the knowledge behind what the app was being created from outsiders. Well, in this entire session, I'm going to discuss in detail the topic of abstraction. For that, just stay tuned into the video. Let's dive into the session wherein I'm going to teach to you how you can make certain functions to be mandatory inside my app. Let's create something called as a shape. Now when it comes to shape, I'm going to try to explain with the help of circle, a rectangle, and then the last one to be a square. So basically all the shapes that we have put have a definite area. Now you might have kind of resembling this with the inheritance topic that we have done, but we are going to try and understand how we now will be having something called as a mandatory parameter to be there inside my class. And hence what I'm going to teach to you now is something called as abstract class. Let's go into our code, and over here I'll take an abstract example as my Dart file. Let me just refactor it and follow the snake casing. Yeah, so my abstract class and in fact let me just take this as shape. Okay, now when it comes to the shape, like I said, we will have a calculate area as one particular function, but what you notice is I just have the declaration for the function here. Function has only declaration and no body. Well, what do I mean by that? So if I were to show to you in timer screen, look over here, this calculate time, we basically had the entire code which goes inside the calculate time. However, in this case, I just have made the declaration, following which I'm going to do over here, right click, click on generate toString. So what do you notice? I get a default toString and I'll say shape class which is abstract. Now if you go by the diagram, we have three shapes. The moment you do class circle extends shape, what do you notice? It starts giving me an error. Now in fact, if I keep my mouse, you'll kind of relate it to the scenario wherein I was trying to do the override for stateless and stateful widget when we were trying to work on the timer screen. Let me see what suggestion in fact it gives, and it says create one missing override, and I'll say yes. Do you notice this declaration which I had in my parent, it's currently asking me to write the code for it, and that too over here when it is inside the circle class. Well, That's exactly what we have been doing in every particular stateless widget. The moment we do the extends, it kind of makes this build function to be mandatory to be written inside the code, and only then the widget shall be displayed. Well, now what I'll try and do, create over here, let's say a double variable for radius of circle. Now I wanted to show to you this particular example in Android Studio. That's because we here will get a lot of suggestions. However, I'm going to switch back to the Dartpad the moment we are done with all this piece of code. So now again inside the circle constructor, I'll put this dot radius of circle, wherein I'll say that circle, or in fact let me just keep double only, circle area is equals to 3.1416 times the radius of circle times radius of circle. Next, I'll just return this circle area. So basically, what do you notice? The error to be going away. Now, inside the main function, let's try and see what will happen if I try to create an object for my abstract class. So I'll say shape, some mathematical shape equals to shape. The moment I do this, even in Android Studio, it says abstract class cannot be instantiated. Let's say if I try to dump this on my Dartpad window, and if I try to run, it exactly says abstract class cannot be instantiated, and in fact it highlights what exactly I'm doing wrong in my code. So what do you understand is I can try using the child class, but I cannot create directly an object for my shape. Well, that's exactly how even the Flutter team hides the implementation for the build function, or in fact all the things that they have done in the stateless widget. Now what I'm going to try and show to you is how this circle we will be using. So let's see, we put over here circle and circle 1, wherein I'll say the radius of the circle is 2.4. Now I'll create one variable as area of circle, and I'll use the circle 1 to calculate the area. Next, in the print, I'll say area of circle, and I'll print this variable. Since Android Studio doesn't give me any errors, let's hop into the Dartpad and try to run this code. And it says 18.095, which basically is calculation of the entire circle area. Now, what do we understand is when it comes to the abstract class implementation, whenever we do anything extending to the abstract class, mandatorily we have to override that particular function, without which my code would not work. I'm going to quickly try and copy this particular circle, change it to the rectangle, and still show it to you that this is exactly the thing that will be required. Well, in case of a rectangle, let me keep integer height and integer width. So I'll say that we require the height of the rectangle. Let me change this to rectangle, Secondly, we require the width of the rectangle. Now, when it comes to the rectangle area, is going to be just width times height. Now I'll switch this particular thing to int and then change this to rect area. But wait, do you notice that over here I've started getting an error which basically says that I just cannot have the rect area as an integer. Let me try and see. If I put this as a double, so basically the error goes away. However, the error now switches to width and height, which again makes me convert my code to all double. The thing that we inference here is once we define one particular data type as a return in case of an abstract class, no matter what I try, I still have to follow the rules and stick to the double only. Well, that's even the Flutter team does. No matter what you will do inside the container, you are still supposed to return a widget, and that's exactly gets displayed on the screen. Hence, that's exactly even the Flutter team inside the stateless widget has kind of made compulsion to be done. Now if I try to create an object for my rectangle, let me put the width as 45.6 and then I can use area of rectangle and then using my object calculate the area, following which in the print statement I can see this is the area of rectangle that I would want to print. I'll try to run the entire code and see if now I can just calculate both the areas, and yes, I can do so. Same, let me quickly now duplicate this, change it to square. A square would just have a side, and I'll switch this thing to side. I'll remove this and then mention over here square area. Now what you can notice, on a similar fashion I can create an object for my square and then calculate the area of my square. Now when I try to run the code, it says area of square and whatever is the 123 square that is being printed on the print window, that is the output window. So with this I hopefully understand, or probably you would have got all the things to be cleared, that what happens exactly when you're trying to do the extends, especially when it is having an abstract class. Hopefully the demonstration of abstract class now kind of explained you how important could be code reusability. Did you notice all the functions are now returning double? In fact, when I tried to change or convert it into an integer format, then it kind of dropped an error. Hence, abstract class kind of also ensure that you have a common behavior being implemented throughout the app. In fact, when you have anything to extend with the stateless widget, you try and do so in every time your widget wherein you extend the stateless widget. In this way, a Flutter team has a lot of abstraction being done on the widgets. We're going to dive more into them, and we are now going to step into an entire small app wherein we'll create a small project on calculator. Well, in that calculator, we intend to brushen up our basics even further. So stay tuned and keep learning with Hoping Minds.